All right. Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So this is our third episode of Brimfield Matters. It's an informative discussion. I hope news and informational session on what's going on in the Brimfield community.
Yes, it's the post-election piece. We're no longer selectmen, but based on feedback that we've had, this still serves an important informational output for us. People who are interested in town, interested in what's going on with the board. We're going to hopefully stay involved, stay in touch with the happenings of town, and be able to continue to let people know what's going on from our outlook, I guess.
Right. And actually, I think it gives us a little liberty to speak without the confines of having needing to participate on the board and wear two badges, if you will, just to be able to kind of talk freely a little bit. And so it is our hope that we'll be able to get into some pertinent information and maybe even have guests or call in guests and try to see what kind of feedback we get from the community. We're excited.
And this is the first time we're trying YouTube Live, so right. You're going to see blunders and everything else that our expert editors, cut out previously.
Right.
So we're going to hopefully, and this format will also allow us to have chat and to have more interactive participation with you.
Right. So this is, again, we didn't highly publicize this one, but I think if this catches on a little bit, it'll be a little bit easier for us to get the word out and then get this participation. So, all right. Well, first off, we're past the election. We've got it's a 5-member board in Brimfield. Right now, there are 4 members because of the resignation of one member that became effective on
June 30th.
Yeah, the end of June 30th.
Yeah.
And so, and Mr. Soto and Mr. Adams have taken our respective membership seats on the board. And so, so that's the standings right now. The chair is Mr. Kelly. The vice chair is Miss Collins. And I don't think they elected a secretary this year.
No, they didn't.
Yeah, it's funny.
Huh.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So they didn't. At least they haven't yet anyway. So they've only had a couple of meetings. They've put off a couple of meetings. There's a lot going on. And so,
and it's just as messy as it was last year.
Yeah, I have to say it's definitely a little controversial. So what we were going to do, rather than just kind of wax poetically about all that, is maybe go through the upcoming agenda. There's an agenda coming for this particular Monday evening that's been posted online.
And there's been discussion on other agendas since the new board took their seats.
Right.
But I think this would be a good format for us to kind of preview or possibly afterwards to discuss the kind of after action report of what happened.
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it'll be interesting. And I think we're going to try to plan it that way where we'll have an episode that will be right after a meeting, because it does make sense that we can kind of, chew up what was done in the meeting and maybe kind of explain things that people might or might not understand. And maybe we can get explanations too, because it's not always crystal clear sometimes what happens at a meeting, because you only get so much information that's public. And they obviously are voting and discussing on information that they've gotten over the last days, if not week before, or 2 weeks before the next meeting.
Right. So I guess it is also, I guess we should discuss it and hear what your thoughts are on it, because before, like this agenda really strikes of we should have people there. There's enough issues on this agenda that maybe you're not fully aware of, and hopefully we'll give you some education on that. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be stuff that we don't know, but whatever the case, there's stuff here that we really need to keep active. The whole community needs to keep active and make sure that things are done correctly.
Right.
And just getting into it, the first thing on the agenda is the police chief appointment. This has been a mirror image of what happened last year, the fiasco that happened last year with a police officer. And it appears that they have not learned a thing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely a situation that we're into. This is going to be August 1st when this meeting happens. And it shouldn't be lingering, to be honest. It shouldn't be lingering.
No. And especially with, this individual, Chief Kuss, he's been nothing but dedicated to this town, and as I've said at meetings and in emails and everything else, treating a longtime employee like this, who has been kind of a stabilizing factor in the town. I mean, you look at town hall, he goes in there, he, listens to all sorts of issues. And if nothing else, he's been really good for everyone in town hall to get to know and rely on for his good common sense words and actions and everything else.
Yeah, anybody who's been in town and has been associated with the rec and the Halloween, the trunk or treat, just any of obviously the flea market, and they know that one of the numbers on the speed dial for somebody who's been chair, and we've both been chair at different times, number at the top of the speed dial is his, and he's always responsive. And if you want to look at how many hours a person works compared to how many hours they work, he's always been available. He's been exemplary, if not. Much more than you expect.
One of the comments that I heard, from people that know him, that isn't well known per se in the community is, this is a guy who in the 19 years he's worked for us hasn't had a Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner that he hasn't had, or any dinner for that matter, that he hasn't had his radio with him at the dining room table. If there was an incident on Christmas Day, he's responding.
Right.
Right in the middle of Christmas dinner.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the way he is.
And even if it's something as simple as, I don't know what to do, there's no oil in the town hall or whatever, he knows what to do. He did direct you a little bit. So he's always been there. But so in any event, I mean, he should have been. We should probably get into statutes and whatnot. I mean, by state statute, he has to retire in November.
Correct.
And that's an age determined forced retirement kind of thing. There's no way of going back. So this should have been easy.
But that is a question of mine, and I think it's kind of a gray area at this point. In the past, I always joked with him saying that as long as I was selectman, we were going to roll him out like Weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, keep him around.
Yeah, and you could do that with a letter from the Congress saying that it's okay for a small community police chief.
Right.
I've heard that since the police reform came about, that wasn't allowed.
Right.
I read through it and I couldn't find it.
I couldn't find that either. I agree. I mean, I did a search kind of on for words to that effect, but that was the word that we got, that it was not something that you could write in and try to make an exemption. So I guess I have to assume that that's true.
Taking the word of this board for what it's worth.
Well, we got it from police officers as well. I mean, I did anyways.
Yeah.
And so,
okay.
So again, I don't know what the source was for that particular officer, but
I would hope that this board would have checked with town council to see. We'll get into town council in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's something worth thinking about, I guess. Hoping that happened.
Yeah, I think everything that has been discussed in open meeting, and I would expect, I don't know what's been discussed obviously in executive session, but everything that's been discussed relative to this is it appears, at least what they've told the public, is that the retirement is forced and is not, you can't make an exemption.
Right. And hopefully the fact that he's on there as an appointment and resignation, to my to my knowledge, he hasn't resigned, so that will hopefully just be a very quick appointment, probably through the end of November. And hopefully this ridiculous, not needed chapter can be shut down.
The delay just seemed to be unnecessary.
Yeah.
Anyhow, should we talk about the search now?
Sure.
Because it's related. So later on in the agenda, there's an item under new business called police chief search. And so what this means basically is, generally speaking, and for such an office as this, you would create a team, and that a search team would, one, solicit for people to apply, and then create a team that looks at all the applicants and creates basically a wants list, a needs list, if you will, and then interviews and try to fit the person to the position and get the right person to do the best for the town. So that police chief search, I'm assuming, is going to be the beginning of that.
And this is going to be telling too, to see how willing they are to work with the community, as has been, touted, where most communities will have representatives from not only, town government, but the business community, the residential community, and police community.
Mm-hmm.
And this search, for a police chief in particular, is so important in today's day and age.
Right.
That, we need to, hopefully, we can get a good representative group together to look at this.
I mean, I would assume it's probably going to be at least one member of the current sitting board, the police chief himself, because that just makes sense.
I would hope so.
And then
I hope they have enough respect for him
and
allow
maybe two other people, maybe one or two other people. Maybe the fire chief wouldn't be a bad idea.
Emergency management
or the EMD, right? Yeah, that may be a good one too. And so you usually have anywhere between 3 and 5 people on such a search committee. So it'd be interesting to see how that gets put together. But that's on the agenda, and I want to make sure we mention it. It just made sense to mention it in as a continuation of the police chief's appointment.
Right.
I think we are done on that, you think?
I think so.
All right, excellent. And we'll discuss this. Our hope is that we'll get something right after this next meeting to go back and look at exactly what transpires during the meeting, because I think that'll make sense. The next point is the treasurer collector clerk. And I think that most people were at the town meeting are aware that there was a little bit of the treasury and treasurer collector positions were combined. Treasurer and tax collector positions were combined a couple years ago, and that was in deference to a request made by Sue Hilker at the time, I think, and Andrea, I think, was
she was involved.
Yeah. And so it was looked at. We thought about it for half the year and kind of put it together, and it seemed to make sense. And then it was put on the floor and it was voted on. And
then it was a 2-step process. We had to vote vote for it at town meeting, and then it was also on the next ballot.
Right, it was on the next ballot as well. And so lately we have a new treasurer collector, assistant treasurer collector, and something happened at town meeting and during the financials where they took the assistant position and the standard position, whatever you want to call it, the primary position, and basically combine the hours and then divide the hours and combine the money and divided the money between the two so that they were equal. It ended up being more hours, I think. But not necessarily more hours open to the public, but more hours for them to get the work done. And they also solicited for an assistant clerk to basically do mundane envelope, printing and filling and whatnot to kind of help things out, so they weren't doing that. So that's kind of what happened on the floor, and that's where this is coming from.
Right. One interesting thing that you mentioned just now was there's no open hours, no additional hours open to the public.
Right.
I see that as a really damaging thing throughout town government, in this past year, and it was precipitated through COVID and wanting everybody to continue working. But since COVID, the pandemic has ended, the hours have not been put back to where they were. There's hours that they're working. One of the things that really kind of upset me in the discussions with the treasurer collector and assistant treasurer collector was, in talking about the additional hours, somebody asked if that meant additional hours open to the public, and their response was no, because it interrupts them and
makes them less efficient.
Makes them less efficient, which I totally understand that, but at the same time, I also understand that part of the job of a municipal employee, especially treasurer collector, department, is to be available for someone who might want to come in and talk about taxes, might want to talk about any of that stuff.
Right.
And it's been done, in every town and every state, for the past 200 years, people get interrupted and have the conversation. And
right. That's part of why you have a window and a door on the building, so that people can go in during the business hours to find out what the tax bill's about, or why the excise tax has some sort of an extra amount on it because it's delayed or it was late or whatever. You have a right to go in and ask that. And we do hear, and I certainly have heard a couple where people say, I've gone down and it's closed. It's during hours when it should have been open. But really, we at least minimally have to have some sort of access to the public. There's no doubt. And this, I don't know, again, the people who were at the town meeting voted for it. So it is what it is. It should make the service better. I don't know why we needed more hours and the way it was set up. In the first place, it just never made sense to me. But the people voted. People who were there voted. So It is what it is.
Yeah. So then the next one is actually the public access TV, cable TV clerk and assistant, Bob Datz. He's putting in his resignation, which to me was interesting. Bob has been in town for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
He has brought the cable access, up quite a ways, and it hasn't always been a great relationship between me and him, to be honest. But I did appreciate his longevity and his, dedication to the town.
Right.
And he also, in the past 2 years, put together, maybe 3, put together a new, upgraded, totally refreshed system for about $80,000 out of the cable. So the cable money that it's not part of the town's annual budget, because we through our contract with Spectrum or Charter, they give money every year that funds the community access TV. So he had been saving his money, got $80,000 worth of new hardware and software to try to improve the
Mm-hmm.
system. It seems to be doing better now. I agree. It was rough pretty much all of last year.
Yeah, we had a lot of trouble, especially with the audio.
Yeah.
Mostly with the audio, but that does seem to have been fixed,
resolved.
whatever happened, which is great. And was it the last year he was been in this assistant role. I know he was away for a while, and he's been in this assistant role, just helping with the just hopefully smooth transition and some equipment like that can be a little bit quirky, and so he could answer questions that needed to be from Matt for the last year.
Yeah. I will say, some of the things with the new cable access, he seems very good. one of the things that I don't know, and I have no idea if this played any part of anything, but one of the goofy things that I think we both voted for, and I know my vote was more in solidarity, still trying to maintain solidarity with the board on something that, if people had conversations, then I went along with it. I'm not so happy about it now, but when we hired the new cable guy, he accepted the position, and then the next meeting,
Right.
he came in and immediately asked for, before he signed his contract,
Right.
he asked for a $5 an hour raise, and we gave it to him.
Right. Right.
Which, again,
right,
money wise,
well, it's one of those things where it's hard in a rural budget. Now, granted, he's paid through the grant. Is he paid through the grant?
Yes, he is.
Okay, so technically, it's part of the grant money that comes from the cable. So, and it's a fee on the subscribers, so everybody pays it, kind of thing. And this is how they support local programming that wouldn't otherwise be able to get a line item in a small town. So, and the reality is, almost everybody's underpaid.
Yeah.
And so yes, it made sense. No, it didn't make sense. And the same, just in light of everything else. But but it is, again, it comes out of that grant.
Right.
So it was a little something that stuck like a craw. Yeah. It definitely stuck in one's throat a little bit.
Yep.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
I mean, he deserves it when you look at, from a technical skill level, and minimum wage and what, if you want to kind of do a reference point, it's probably right, but everybody needs that same argument.
Right. Yeah. And I guess that's a good point. At some point, hopefully this year, they're going to get going on a benchmark, which we should have done last year.
Right.
And that just got, pushed aside when it wasn't going to be as easy as they were hoping. They meaning, Ms. Collins, where, spending that money just didn't make sense to me when I had done the previous benchmark and, thought it came out pretty good and had some additions that I knew we needed, but it wasn't going to be that big a deal. And I mean, I think that part of being a selectman is understanding that you are going to have to lift things. You are going to have to be there and do tasks, which I think we're going to get to in the next part as well.
Yeah.
But, what we found and what we've found since then is, we had some amazing employees, and I'll put the chief in that category. And I think that one of the first things that the search committee is going to find is, in order to get another police chief that's half as good as our current one, we're going to have to increase that salary
substantially.
As people left, we bumped up the treasurer collector after our long-term, very beloved treasurer left, which is very unfortunate because, she deserved all that money as well. The chief deserves more money than he's making. Carol, we were able to get a couple of things through and make it kind of temporary. That was, not well received by members of the board. But then when the new person came on, Teresa, they handed it out, like candy.
They sure did. Yeah.
And it's a very bad way to treat our employees.
Right.
And I hopefully with the new benchmarking, they'll actually start to really make some good changes.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, it will be eye-opening.
Yeah.
But it's going to come to fruition when we talk about the tax rate. Well,
right.
Come the end of the year, the beginning of next year. I think it's usually the end of the year that you start talking about the tax rate.
Yep. And
so,
the other kind of tricky part with that is that finance committee does a great job at socking money away.
Right.
And so
protecting residents from getting crushed.
Right.
By an increase in tax rate.
right?
It's true.
We've had a couple of little dips here that a lot of towns have had to cut back on services. We've been very fortunate to not have to do any of those cutbacks.
Right.
And that's only because of the way that the finance committee has done stuff. But the way that they're storing money in different, and they're not hidden accounts or anything like that. They just have a stabilization account, which we fund every year. We've got the capital plan that we fund every year. And there's a bunch of different accounts that we fund very well. And that's protecting us 3 years from now. Right. And we won't see that. But as things come in and as we're paying more and as we're doing more and right. the select board is doing less as a board, and right. instead handing that stuff off to consultants, that's the stuff that's going to come back in 3 years that we're not going to be contributing as much to these other accounts that buffer us from downturns in the economy.
Right. Absolutely.
So that's a good segue into the first bit of new business, which is really not new business at all. And it's the grant writer using ARPA funds for Ms. Akobe.
Yeah. I mean, this came up when we were actually talking about what to do with the ARPA funds. And at least that's kind of the way it was first presented when it was realized that we didn't have to do anything. Almost a year ago. Yeah, we didn't have to do anything to get the ARPA funds. They were doled out by the state based on the town size and population, et cetera. So you got them right away. We have Eva's been really good about, and really the Treasurer Collector's Office has been good about identifying people to try to do some work off tax abatement by working in some regard for the town. And we have a grant writer that honestly, I have to say we haven't used. I mean, we use not much anyway.
Not much.
Maybe the library. Have they used her?
I'm not. No, Eva has used her on a couple of things.
Okay, good.
But she has experience at the Hitchcock Academy getting grants for them.
Right.
So she is someone that has experience doing all this stuff, and but she has been grossly underutilized, which is very sad, because the reason why we have senior tax program, a senior tax work-off program, is to help seniors on a fixed income, still pay for their taxes and be able to do everything.
Right.
So the town gives these tax workers, seniors, I think it's $2,500 a year, $2,000 a year.
Yeah, there's a limit.
Potential.
There's a limit to how many hours they can work at what rate and whatnot, and that's all kind of sorted out. How many slots there are to allow that to happen. Right. But it does help out, and it helps out the town too, because again, it fills these needs with individuals who are local, and there's a benefit to both the town and to them to have them in place.
Absolutely. So instead of utilizing our senior worker, that would help out a fellow resident, which to me seems like the proper thing to do. Instead, they want to bring in this person using ARPA funds. So now it's not only the other thing is that every year we take a chunk of money and say, this money is going to be unrealized because it's the senior tax program. So the town has already realized a $2,000 reduction in taxes for this senior worker. So it's not like if they use it, the town is going to see less revenue. They've already done that.
Right.
So that money is set aside before the budget is set.
I think the other important thing with this, and I guess, when I look back at the boards that we sat on, I think, and the grants that we did get, I mean, they were talking about some type A people that we did our own grants, and we, you know what I mean? We kind of wrote a lot of it. And so I worked with, to get the green community and cares and what you did in the comment. Just we've always done that ourselves, and some of these community IT grants and the best practices grants. I mean, we've always just and the Pioneer Valley, some of the grants that we get from them. I mean, somebody on the board has always been kind of first and foremost on writing them with whatever input was needed from town members, and that always worked out well. But now, if we don't have that active participation and steerage of these applications, I guess, then we do need some way of getting them. And I don't begrudge a grant writer. I mean, a professional grant writer. They can probably shake the bushes and find more. It's somebody who's done it in Springfield. But usually you've got to pay them. And the way this is going to get paid is through the ARPA funds, and it's just going to take away from something else,
right?
I think. And usually the ARPA fund, the way you pay a grant writer, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's always been in my mind, it's always been a percentage of what they end up getting in the grant. And I don't, usually, I don't know if that's a gradient or if it's like set in stone. I have no idea. That'd be an interesting thing to ask.
It can be either.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it will be interesting. But, my major concern with this is, we have had applications from the library, from the school for security cameras,
right,
from the fire department for UTVs. We've had the town clerk and town moderator asking for voting assistance, which are all fairly important stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they have always said no. And they've either put it on the back burner or nothing, or just postponed it until their big pet project, the water system, is completed.
I think personally, if we're going to go, if you have the ARPA funds in hand and you have a lot of needs, I think those needs should be addressed. The pooling it all for a theoretical water project it sounds great. Is it necessary? Yes, it's necessary. It will be necessary. If we do new town buildings, it will be part of that build. But I think by saying that all the ARPA funds that we have are going to be just contained in this one bucket, and for whatever reason, it just seems like a loss of other opportunities.
Yeah.
And personally, I just think that that's not where it should be. Just positioned. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah. And the ARPA funds, can be used for a bunch of things. We have a bunch of needs, like the ones that I just said, are right there. Plus the water system for sure we need.
Right.
But we also have the ARPA funds can be used for building renovations, somewhat. And it's, you have to be a little bit creative with the wording, but it's for COVID purposes. Right off the bat, the annex, and it's 30-inch wide, or what? Probably not 30-inch, but its hallway is certainly not. So there is very compelling case to say we need to get out of the annex. We need to use these funds for a building project.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, you could list 10, 15 really good projects that you could use that money for.
And of those 10 or 15, none of them will be a grant writer.
Right. No, right. I think, I mean, there are grants out there and maybe it'll come to fruition, but to me, it's, I don't know.
And like you said, you can get a grant writer that will work, do the work up front for the percentage behind.
Right.
And, yes, that is still, as Ms. Collins has said to me a couple of times, that will still be money coming out from the town. But if it's budgeted as a grant, it doesn't impact the same bucket. If we pay this grant writer through ARPA funds, that means that the voting machine or the voting equipment that the town clerk wanted may not be able to be funded, because this person will cost money from the ARPA funds. The other thing that I was thinking originally was going to be, that this person was going to be used for was reporting of the use of ARPA funds.
Right.
Yeah, and that to me, and I'll defer to you, Paul.
Right.
You did all the reporting for CARES.
Right. I mean, the state, it's thick. I mean, the number of pages that you got to go through and what you have to keep track of, there's a lot to it, but it's not too hard to do. You got Marie, who's doing great to kind of keep track of where the money is being spent. You've got, if there's any question, you have the Treasury Collector's Office where you can say, all right, was that money spent? And then all you got to do is cross your T's, dot your I's, and make sure that you use the money in the ways that you said on the dates, that you sign it, you put your name on it, you ship it out. It's really not that hard to do the reporting. It's not, even if there's a narrative, it's not a book. I had to do it with the green community one, and that's got to be done every year, every so many years, just to kind of keep them abreast of what's going on as far as the carbon footprint of the town. But it's not that hard, and most of it is gotten through record keeping that's already in place. So it's not much.
Going back from the last meeting where the honor system has gone out the door, as one of our selectmen decided to say, nothing could be further from the truth. This town, and I'm not going to go with my pet of the finance committee, right. But there are so many checks and balances in between the treasurer collector and the assistant and Marie, mm-hmm. and the select board themselves sign every warrant, so they have to see every document that and they can see we were given an envelope of every item that was paid for that week, from the right. school department, even though we didn't oversee that, mm-hmm. Fire, police, board of health stuff came through, so we could review everything.
Right.
So, and that's available also to the finance committee, so there was never any honor system. There were always checks and balances, and every dollar that has been spent in the past 10 years has been very well tracked.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that goes with hours of, we're kind of digressing to the HR kind of thing, but it also goes to vacation hours. And I mean, it's not like people aren't watching that closely. And I think it's, I mean, when you're in a rural community, if you go back 30 years, it's pretty laid back. It's pretty soft the way they kind of track things. But I think now it's not that way.
Right.
Things are much more exact. And so to think that that's not happening, that people are accruing hours indiscriminately and taking hours indiscriminately, it's just wrong. I mean, it's just wrong.
Right. Not to mention, on top of all, and this doesn't, I'm going to go back to the finances, mm-hmm. but we also every year go through an audit, a financial audit. Auditors right. come in, external auditors come in and spend a week with our accountant, treasurer collector, and everybody else to make sure that everything is written down.
Right.
And they have never, ever in the years that I've been here
right. had
any sort of huge issue with any of the accounting practices we do.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see with that discussion how that transpires. So
I think we can go
past the fiscal year transfers. That's the checks and balances we were just talking about, where the money's being spent, what's overdrawn, what is left in certain monies for line items, and Marie would be part of that. Surplus inventory, again, same thing. That's I don't think there's anything. And the Chapter 90, just so people know what it is, it's basically a contract with the state for road upkeep. And so what we do, certain roads, and Zach's really good about kind of rotating the needs and then fitting that in. And the Chapter 90's reimbursement is to get that done. I mean, that's simplifying it quite a bit. There's a lot more to it that he does, but that's kind of what it's about, so people understand what it's about.
Yeah, and there was something on Facebook this past week that talked about improper, or patching a road that should be replaced.
I did see that,
and I I commented on that, and I 1000% stand behind what I said, that, every town is given a certain percentage of something or other for the Chapter 90 reimbursement. Zach tracks that. Zach has a list of every road that in town, when the last time it was improved, and when it should be redone again.
Right.
And he's very good about that. He's, in the past couple of years, he's done Dirth Hill, he's done section of Dunham Town, Brimfield,
Right.
Dunham Town,
And
Palmer.
I think they're working on Lyman Barnes. They're doing a lot with that one now.
Yeah, a section of East Hill was recently done.
And I think there's a big difference between trying to make the road more passable when they do a resurface versus repaving. When you do a repave, you go down to substrate and you basically make a new road. The cost differential is astronomical per square foot. And so, yes, resurfacing is a patch. It's basically you're trying to buy a little bit more time until all the other roads are dealt with, and that one comes up to the top of the list for need. And so, yeah, that's just the way it is, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's Chapter 90 anyways. The spotted lanternfly, this came out last year. So I don't know. I haven't really seen the new alert, to be honest.
No.
But I know it was appreciated. It's an invasive species. And so I don't have a picture. I guess I didn't. Yeah. So it is reportable to the state. And so anybody who sees it really should try to kill it, capture it, and then report it to the state, or at least call our Board of Health. I would imagine that would probably be the best way to go through it. But I'll see what they have to say.
Yeah.
But it is an invasive species. Law firm search. This is an interesting one. So for as long as I've been here, and we've had the same KP Law as our town council. It's my understanding that they do a great portion of municipalities in the state, and maybe other states for that matter, but I don't know. But Massachusetts, anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't know what this is about, except to see what else is out there.
This one, once again, I mean, if it is just a refresh, that's never a bad thing. Just see.
Right.
But if they are seriously thinking about moving away from KP, they have been, extremely helpful. There's been a couple of serious personnel issues in the past couple of years. That I mean, when we were chair, we relied on them heavily. They, their rates were very reasonable.
They're comparable to. Yeah, I mean they're good. I mean they were good. They were very supportive. They were very responsive. I thought when you needed somebody, they were there. During COVID, they were there. We worked a lot between working with them and then the state and Senator, especially Representative Smoller's office. And then the state election Secretary of State. And so they were really, really helpful with that and trying to get through all that debacle. There's definitely a little bit of animosity between certain members of this board and KP Law. I think it came out when we were discussing the solar, when they weren't happy with some of the guidance comments, references that KP Law made, that we made very clear during all those discussions as well. They didn't like it, to the point where they were even asking the audience members if they liked their council representation. The reality is council representation, they know more. They just know more. That's why they're there. And so to just blatantly disregard, or to say, oh, I beat them in a lawsuit before, so I'm not listening to anything they say. I think that's not quite the right attitude to go into it. And I would think that that's probably fundamentally what's going on here.
Yeah, which scares me to death. I mean, as if this board hasn't changed enough in this town with its employees, and I mean, it's the long-term employees that are getting more and more, disenfranchised, are feeling disenfranchised, and now this law firm that has been in place for over 20 years, that was the only one. This just floors me. Last year and the year before, we did some work with the personnel policy, and some stuff came up about vacation, or not vacation, but holidays and stuff like that. The discussion we had about Juneteenth being a state holiday, that whole section of the personnel policy is actually from the bylaws, the general bylaws, and the personnel section of the bylaws. Our town clerk didn't have a copy of those bylaws.
Right.
The only one that did was KP.
Yeah.
If we get rid of KP, we don't get KP's records.
Yeah, you'll lose that continuity. There's no doubt you'll lose that continuity.
Yeah.
That they understand kind of where somebody else would have to be. Well, one, I don't even know what it would cost them to get all paperwork from KP. You know what I mean? I would think that there'd be some fees associated with all that. But again, that looks like that's what they're trying to do, is to maybe look around and see what's out there and then make a decision and make the right decision for the town. So I hope they make the right decision for the town.
Yeah.
That's it. Vacation and sick time. Yeah, I got a feeling this is going to be a continuation of the discussion about honor system and that little discussion that happened a couple weeks ago. So it's probably just about record keeping. I'm sure Marie will be able to keep everybody straight. Select board delineation of
responsibilities.
So I don't know if that's the liaison kind of stuff.
Well, yeah.
Or is it more than that?
I don't know, and we'll find out on Monday. But I'm thinking, part of the responsibilities of the board, and this goes towards vacation and sick time as well. We used to have it actually got brought up in, I think, with you when you were chair, was the liaisons and the all board meetings.
Right.
And we worked on it together. And that's the whole board worked together.
Right.
Who didn't all get along, just so you know. But we did come to agreement and, respected each other. So that's an aside. But the liaisons really worked well. And one of the things that it did was, give this single point of contact to say, to a department head who may be going on vacation, just so that somebody knew. But that got dismantled last year, and we didn't want to continue. We, meaning the board, didn't want to assign liaisons.
Getting kicked down from me, and then it just never made the agenda again.
Yeah, and it's really too bad, because that was a really, in my opinion, a really good stream of communication between the individual department heads and the board. And I knew every time that the senior center went on vacation, or police chief.
Right.
You knew about Board of Health, and
right.
And
you kind of got a little bit of feedback that was just say, hey, it's what we're talking about. And during that time with COVID, we were getting updates and things that might come up. He just brought them to the board. It worked out really well. And the few times that we got the opportunity to actually meet with the boards before COVID and all that, when we met with them, I thought it was educational. If nothing else, you hear that, somebody thinks this way and somebody else thinks that way, and you can tell everybody this is kind of the way things have been or whatever. And you can kind of explain things. Well, why are you doing the paperwork that way? Why are you doing the paperwork that way? And that really helped, I thought, in those discussions. I thought it was fruitful.
And I guess the other possibility of what this could be is the delineation of responsibilities, which also deteriorated last year completely, was an understanding that this is a board of 5, and the responsibilities are not, no one person, chair, vice chair, secretary, or anybody else should be going out on lone wolf missions trying to do stuff, themselves. Everything needs to go through the full board.
Right.
And I'm hoping that this kind of gets back to that.
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly with liaisons, we got to know these other boards, and we got to know what they might be doing wrong.
Right.
I don't know of anything, and I hope it never happened, that that liaison, before discussing with the board, went up to whoever he was,
The department.
and said, you got to change this way.
Right.
Because you can't.
You can't.
It's a board decision.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the responsibilities of the select board, I mean, you can get the Massachusetts Selectmen's Handbook and you read it, and it tells you what the responsibilities are, at least kind of on face value, what they are. Now, individually, towns are going to be a little bit different here and there, but there are only so many things that you can do. The responsibilities are going to be to work together to do the best for the town. And I don't know, it'd be interesting. I don't know what else.
Yeah.
Other than what's in the book and what's in the bylaw, then there's only so many responsibilities you can actually take on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know.
So we'll see.
Yep.
Hopefully it's a quick and fruitful discussion.
All right. Old business, they're bringing up security system proposals. There was at the last meeting, if you didn't make it, there was they rescinded a vote to spend X amount of money on security in the annex, and then they changed the number value and then revoted it to spend the money again on the annex.
But I don't think they got that vote passed.
Oh no, then it was stopped because they wanted to get more information. Yeah, Mr. Adams said, "Hey, hold on a minute. Do we have any more bids other than just this one?"
Okay.
And they were going to try to get more bids for, and I don't know exactly what they're trying to do, but
yeah, rough numbers. I believe it went from 20 to 30,000.
Yeah, something like that.
And
low 20s to 27, 28, something like that. I agree.
And this was based on a threat that I don't know much of anything, what the threat was or anything like that.
No idea.
But they thought it was important to get cameras and locks, which, in my eyes, I have to question, and maybe this is part of it, and I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but my assumption would be, if you're upgrading the locks based on the security, are they planning on shutting down any public from going into the annex, during working hours? Because that would
Security.
yeah. I mean, because really, without having that be the case, why are locks so important? Based, if you're going to use the argument of there was a serious security threat, well, cameras for sure. Hiring or getting a detail from the police department, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But unless you're going to shut the annex down, there are other reasons, and I fully agree that we should have better locking system. Everybody in town, I think with the exception of myself, who's ever volunteered, and probably you too, have keys to the annex, and we need to rekey that building. It doesn't need to cost tens of thousands of dollars.
Mm-mm.
We could get a secure system. I mean, I've got cameras all over my farm, both coming up the driveway where, I see everybody that comes up and down, and, at all hours.
Mm-hmm.
And that cost me less than $1,000.
Right.
And I've got, 30 acres of protection here on $500. It's absolutely needed. I think cameras should be had. But again, this is a building that since we bought it has never been a permanent solution. And it's outlasted its
Right.
most optimistic lifespan.
It's true.
Why would we sink $30,000 into this building that hopefully won't stay long? When there are viable solutions, for locks, we could get programmable locks like they have on the public safety building,
Right,
for less than $5-10 grand easy, and the cameras. We probably really only need the video surveillance that was purchased for CARES.
right.
There are two ring cameras.
Yeah, at least 2. There may even be 3. I'll have to look at
Okay.
that. But there are cameras in there that we had anticipated using, maybe just 2 because we only had the 2 doors that we were going to put.
So we still only have 2 doors.
Yeah, well, to define that people coming up the walkway so that you know who they, and then we're going to usher them into the conference room, which is no longer a conference room, but usher them there for the meeting and then be able to exit through the other door. So, so I know that there are cameras in that building. They weren't put up because things kind of transpired where everybody was remote and it just didn't seem like we needed them at that time. So, but they're there. And so I should be there.
Yeah.
And the programmable locks are easy. You can disable a program, you give everybody their own, you just disable their code as soon as if they're not employed or whatnot. You can have a master one for security reasons. It's just it's straightforward.
You've implemented that.
I have them at my building. Yeah, we have them, and they're easy to put in. They're easy to reprogram. But you could get it like the ones at the safety complex, probably a level higher with the police and safety and all that. And again,
but
you need 2
for a building like the annex.
I wouldn't. $100 tops.
Yeah,
for programmable locks, easy.
Yeah. So I mean, $2,000, $2,500 would solve all the problems. Not state of the art. Not what we would want for a new municipal building.
Right. But it'd be a bridge.
But in the interim,
it would address what the scare was about, whatever that was about, the threat. It would address that. It could have been implemented literally on a line item, quick, just say $3,000 or whatever, and then use what you have to, and then change it after it was implemented, and it would have been done right away. So for all this, the scary threat, they haven't done anything.
Right. Over a month now.
Yeah.
This will be the 3rd meeting.
And so I don't know. I mean, to me, it was like, I don't know.
Yeah. Employee safety is paramount.
100%.
But, let's get something done. And, spending a ton of money from the building maintenance fund with the buildings that we have on a building that is
that building.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Is just not a smart idea.
Put lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
But all right. The special election caucus and all that.
That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see just what that happens. There are limitations in when the caucus can be. It has to be within, I want to say 38 days.
Yeah,
something
38,
like that. It has
42.
to be something like that. No, between caucus and election, there's a minimum amount of time that has to be done with that. So scheduling becomes a little bit critical, especially as summer goes by really fast. But
I do find it interesting that they're now saying special election warrant. So this will be, as it's written, it's going to be a special election instead of, the smart thing to do again.
Piggyback.
Yeah, piggyback on the primary, or hold off till the general election in November.
Right.
Why would we spend an extra $3,000 to $5,000? And it just
it'd be
again for a board that says they're all about fiscal management and fiscal conservatism.
Right. Well, the other thing too, I think that goes along with this is when we received the resignation letter, the retirement letter. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I want to get the wording right. So when the retirement letter, the discussion was had at that point. What could you do? And certainly the town clerk was instrumental in coming up with options. And it seemed like piggybacking it probably made the most sense. And then as a board, we voted, it may have been the first one that we voted. Did we vote to fill the seat?
Yes, that was the first.
The first one, which then didn't. So right. I guess that vote was.
That was the improper.
So we didn't have to vote, really. Right. So I guess that vote would never really happen. So I was going to say that the board voted to fill the seat with a special election or at the next, I forget how we worded it, but we wanted to fill the seat. It is when you have a resignation or retirement or somebody leaves the board has the right to choose what to do. And I think they're gonna have to discuss what they want to do, and whether it's to fill it, not fill it with a special election, or not fill it for the duration of this board, this fiscal year,
Right.
until the next election.
There is a third option of residents, and I forget the number of residents. It's not like a recall, but a number of residents can get together and say, we want an election.
Oh, okay.
And force
an election. I
Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think this board technically has voted one way or the other what to do with this open seat.
Right. And hopefully this will be that.
And this might be a clarification. Yeah. Of what they're going to do. But well, maybe not do.
Yeah.
Town clerk request for
So that's
police detail. So again, this struck me as funny at the last meeting because I guess the instruction or the delineation of a police presence is under the auspices of the select board. That's what it was kind of said. And then it seemed like that discussion was just going around in a circle about, constable, police, how many they need, one outside to keep people back 150 feet. Again, I don't think this is rocket science, and I don't think the security is that crazy that this can't be done relatively simply. It seemed like that discussion was way too long.
I can't believe that was even a discussion at the board. I mean, that seems like something that the clerk should have talked to the admin and said, maybe brought in the police chief and said, and we need a police detail. What do you think? Set that plan up, and maybe bring in one of the select board members, the liaison of the police department would be the
yeah, maybe. But I think Deb, as the town clerk, said that the board needed to vote on it.
Yeah. But it could have been, it seemed like the first time this was discussed
was then. Yeah. This plan should have been, this is what we decided. I talked to the police chief. Yeah. This is the best use of people, constables. We're looking at something. This is what we need. And we need to get it. Yeah, I agree. This should have been, here's the plan we want that makes the most sense.
Which it looks like that's what is going to happen.
And this must be now that they kind of figured it all out. Hopefully this is what we want, not, I don't know what we want. We might need two. We might need one. We might need one to go back and forth. I don't know. So yeah, because that it wasn't polished. That discussion wasn't very polished.
No.
And then there's an executive session. So the executive session could be. This is a tough one. It's hard to say what it's about.
Yeah, I mean, my fear is once again that it's about the chief. And
yeah, but I don't think we know that 100% for certain, because it could be about anything that was above. How do you pay somebody? I mean, it could be about a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I would think that if it was about somebody that was not employed currently because again, I don't know if that has anything to do with the grant writing negotiations. That ought to be out front. That ought to be in public. Because I don't think there's anything that needs to be. It's not like you're contracting for somebody that's going to be a department head.
Right. It'd be personnel. It has to be personnel.
So somebody that's already employed.
Which, regardless of who it is, this, I'm going to say heavy use of executive sessions. I mean, how many executive sessions have been had this year? I mean, there was one meeting with two or three of them
one. 2, 3, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, at least 4.
I mean,
maybe more. 5.
This creates, and from everybody that I have talked to, and I've talked to a good percentage of the employees in town, and everybody is very upset this year, and very concerned. It's that the morale is horrendous. I'm very concerned that if this continues the way that it's started, we're going to see an even worse turnover than we did last year.
Right.
And the town can't afford to keep flipping employees. I mean, for 1,000 years, we've had employees, last 20 years. I mean,
No, I agree.
turnover has been unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what this is about. And if it's about the police chief search, then you wait till you have a committee, and then you put the committee, and then you put them on doing, and then you don't have to have an executive session.
This is in preparation of negotiations. So I would think that we would need to have an applicant.
Right. Oh yeah. Before it got to this point, I agree. Yeah. Because so it can't be related to that. I don't know.
Yeah. There's so much distrust.
And the state doesn't like executive sessions. And if anybody wants to go to the general law about executive sessions, if you read the first couple of paragraphs, it basically says you try not to use them. The reason that the reasons are so explicit is because they don't want you to use them. Right. And yeah, sometimes you use them and they're because it's on that edge of fitting in, and you try to keep something that's detrimental for the public to hear on a personnel level. You use it, but man, I tell you, using it all the time. I've never seen where there's an average of more than one executive session per meeting. You know, I mean, and we are definitely above that.
Yeah,
definitely above that.
Yeah. So
anyway,
hopefully that and special meetings as well.
Well, right, which didn't happen. A couple of them didn't happen. They were supposed to have a meeting. It wasn't even posted for last Friday. It didn't happen. Well, not last Friday, maybe the Friday before.
Yeah.
So, there've been a few things like that. But so I guess that's it. That concludes the agenda part of things. So the hope is that this will again be a start. It may be a little bit lengthy. We'll edit it a little bit.
Except the live one.
The live one is the live one, I guess.
Yeah.
And we'll repost it.
And hopefully if you subscribe, I don't know where the subscribe button is, but if we were good YouTubers, we'd
you know where
point
it is.
to subscribe.
Yep.
And and when we do go live, I don't know if you get notified or what, but and I think we'll also try to get this at a standard time.
Yeah.
So that we can go live.
More predictable.
We'll be able to do chats, and hopefully people will join us, and we can have a more interactive discussion.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
We did have some